Yeah, hello, good evening, everyone. My name's Zane. I'm with a whole host of people today, and we've got a really fantastic session to deliver for you. And it's all around inspiring, moving stories. Now, before we get into that, I'm just going to get through some of the boring housekeeping. So, what we're going to have for all of today is opportunities to jump in with questions and also to submit any queries or comments as you go through. I'm joined by the amazing Callum, and Callum's going to be going through some of those and pulling them out and presenting them to our guests so we can hear from them. This is going to be recorded and placed on the RCGP YouTube channel to be able to watch at a later date. And at the end, we have an evaluation which we'd really appreciate if you could complete. We read for every bit and we use it to inform future sessions. So, if you come to one of our masterclasses before, then we don't need too much introduction. But if this is your first time, welcome. My name's Hassan. I'm a GP based in the West Midlands. Alongside Callum, I'm one of the physical activity and lifestyle champions at the college. And I have a portfolio career which includes roles as Health Partnerships Lead and on the Swim England Health Commission Advisory Board. Callum.
Hello, I'm Callum. I'm a GP up in Aberfeldy and Kinrannock, which is in the Scottish Highlands, and like all good Highland towns, is famous for its mountains and its whiskey. I am a part-time academic. I do some research at the University of Dundee, and as Hussein mentioned, do some work with the RCGP.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's get straight into it. We're going to be looking at some really incredible moving stories. And to start off with, I'd like to introduce Keswick, who is someone that I've known for about 3 or 4 years now. And I remember when he shared his story with me at the time, we were on our bicycle riding through, maybe not as picturesque as this image suggests, but it was picturesque nonetheless. And I was really blown away by his of discussing physical activity with his general practitioner. Elvis, thank you so much for jumping on board. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Hussein.
Elvis, how about you let us know kind of before you enter that consultation room, a little bit about kind of why you had gone in the first place?
Yeah. So just briefly, in terms of my background, I'm 41 years old. I'm a qualified solicitor. Uh, Elvis is my real name. For anybody that may be intrigued, you can Google me. And I'm also a managing partner at my law firm, employing around 40 people or so in the city of Coventry. Um, Usually relatively healthy and fit in my younger days, playing football and being active, as you usually are, in my 20s and early 30s. But around the age of 33, I really started suffering from quite severe poor health. It was a combination of um, a lot of stress at work, 3 young children at home, but mainly as a result of work pressures, which we all have. I accept that, but I think was coupled with not doing much about it really, and not investing any time and resources in myself at that time. So over a number of years, I put on around 6 stone of weight. I was drinking 6 cups of coffee each day through the day. The stressful days, being a partner of a law firm carries the obvious responsibilities, and all of that I was experiencing at that time. So a number of factors really um, playing a part to all of that. The big thing that did happen was that I started suffering essentially blackouts, episodes where I would wake up being surrounded by paramedics and my wife, and that was really the wake up call. And thought, look, I need to look at myself, and reflected on really what was going on. Looked in the mirror physically, and I was extremely obese. I had a photo here, in fact. I'm a completely different person. A lot of people don't really recognize me if they've not seen me in the last 10 years. but not sleeping, extremely unwell, just feeling fatigued. Strange because to most people around me, I looked fine, no physical symptoms, nothing really that you could put your finger on, but just driving home, driving to work, really unwell generally, and so on. So yeah, I had to respond to all of that. I did go to the hospital a couple of times as a result of the blackouts. I was taken a few times, and that was a bit of a shock. But equally, CT scans and MRIs and so on revealed that there was nothing sinister, nothing serious as far as they could tell,
And did they
which was
give like
brilliant.
did they explain what they thought was going on? So before you went to see the GP, did they give any sort of indication as to the hypothesis?
Really, no. I think their main concern being, the kind of, call was to make sure that there was nothing serious and sinister there. So, scans of my brain and my heart and usual checks and all that kind of thing revealed that I was open. And again, too young and kind of not that perhaps risk area where, I think in reality it was difficult for them to put their finger on it in terms of what was wrong. And I was discharged from that initial NHS service on the basis that I felt better and I was okay. It was not after that that I just knew that something wasn't right. Getting up the stairs and feeling out of breath, feeling unwell again. Just a lot of strange symptoms, and you just sometimes know within yourself that something's not quite right. And I tried very hard to lose weight. I tried very hard to do all sorts of things. It just wasn't working. And in a strange way, I just felt that I was going downhill. I was going downhill fast. My friends at work were very concerned about my health, and I felt very little that could be done until obviously after those episodes at the hospital, I thought, look, I'm going to go and speak to my GP, see if she can give me any advice. I wasn't expecting anything much because, if I'm honest, I didn't think that in any real help because, again, I wasn't presenting with any physical or obvious symptoms really. But I went to see my GP and it really changed my life absolutely. And that is why I wanted to share my story really today with everybody because it absolutely changed everything and the course of my life, the course of my family's life. And it's fundamental. I went to see my GP. We have a small village practice where we are. And I sat down and said, look, I'd like to talk about, me not feeling very well. Explained what, and really taken aback by how interested the GP was. Taken aback by how she wanted to listen. She wanted to hear my story. She understood my confusion, but really couldn't explain what was wrong. And that was perhaps a bit surreal to me and her at the same time. But I said those words. I said, look, I'm not, I don't feel good and I don't know why. But she asked
And the fact
about
that
my
she was
job.
was the fact that she was so interested and engaged in that. Like, was that something that you hadn't experienced maybe when you're going through A&E, etc., or like, or was that a surprise?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a surprise. So another thing that I just discussed with my GP was even mentioned remotely at the hospital. And again, I can understand why. The GP took time to listen, to talk, to probe, to ask me certain questions. Again, as I said, about my life, about work, about when I went to bed, when I woke up, what I ate, what I drank, pressures, all sorts of things that again play an impact on all of us. And we were there for, I think she had to, essentially hold people off that she had, queuing up outside to talk to me. I was there for perhaps about 45 minutes in the end
Hmm.
and really explained everything. And I was intrigued by how interested she was in the story. And I was really taken aback by that. And it was in that consultation that she gave me critical advice that, without exaggerating, changed my life just because of how interested she was and how much emphasis she placed on preventative measures in terms of, look, you can do this, Elvis. This is what I think you need to go and do to help yourself. You don't need medication necessarily, not yet. She told me a few home truths. She said, look, I think you'll probably have a heart attack before too long, and you've got to be careful. You've got young children at home. All the signs and symbols in terms of what you're telling me about the last 3 or 4 years are not good. Your body is giving up, and it's fungus. That be the case. So it was that involvement that everything. And she said, look, you need to change everything in terms of your approach to work, approach to time, approach to exercise, absolutely. And it was that exercise aspect that really changed everything. I did not really exercise at all.
And Elvis, when she sort of brought these concepts in, what were your initial reactions back then? Like, how were you responding to those comments? Was it aligned to what your
Yeah,
expectations were when you came to that appointment?
if I'm honest, no, not at all. My experiences with doctors in the past were very different. You go in with a chest infection, you get some antibiotics, and you get out, and it's a 5 minute job. I think the differences were the time that she spent with me, how interested and intrigued she was by what I was presenting with. She was confused and didn't necessarily know the answer until she had to explore and dig deep to work out what I was going through, and that was the difference. But for me, I think two things. Again, I think probably shock and intrigue because I didn't expect my doctor to be reacting that way, especially at that first level service, essentially. But I wanted to hear the advice, and I think I was really taken aback by the fact that she was prepared to go into such detail in terms of this is what I think you need to do, and I was relieved because what she was telling me were things that I could implement straight away. I could leave that GP surgery, go home, and put my shorts on, and apply
Mm.
a different, essentially, mentality to work and my life and so on. And obviously, one of the things that she did say, which was very interesting, was look, go and buy a bike. And that has stayed with me, and I've shared this story with a lot of people, especially friends that I've not seen for years. And I've said, "Look, Elvis, is that you? I can't believe that you look this way now." But she said, "Look, go and buy a bike, the most expensive one buy." So I went to Leamington, got myself a road bike. This is around the time that I met Hussein as well, and he helped me through over the last few years. But it could have been any sport. It could have been swimming, running, anything. It happened to be, look, go and get a bike. I suspect in the meeting, I probably said, look, as a kid, I've got great memories of cycling down the road, just love bikes, to aim, but something magical, you see taking off every time.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think she
So she
bought into
used
that.
that previous memory and that joy and offered that maybe as a thought. And what were your confidence
Absolutely.
levels when you left the consultation room? Like, how confident did you feel that you could improve your health through the measures that you discussed there? For example, getting a bike and riding them.
Do you know what? 100%, I believed that this was the answer because of the way in which she presented the solution to me and really understood. And a lot of it, the thing back was about psychology. She was selling me the solution. I had to buy into the answer, and it was a very different way of medical work, I suspect, from a medical point of view. And now reflecting back as well, when I speak to guys, in fairness as well, that's the feeling that I'm getting. But no, I bought into it,
Good. And
straight
have you
away,
had many
and
appointments
and
with her
and
before?
yes, I mean, not about similar things, and I'd never disclosed how I was. And again, it was more physical things, your general, infections, chest, cough, bits and pieces, But again, I didn't go into, and again, without the patients giving you a bit of a clue about what they may be going through, and without perhaps the doctor being tuned into those things in between the lines, it's an easy thing to work out. And I could have been quite easily sent away saying, "Look, I think you're fine," and I think my story would have ended very, very differently.
Thank you so much, Elvis. Callum, and also anyone at home, if you have any questions, please pop it into the chat. But I wonder, Callum, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the amazing Elvis?
Elvis, thanks for sharing your story. There's been a kind of question comment put in the chat, which I think is, I'm going to paraphrase, I'm going to split you. So, Francesco, I'm sorry if you feel I don't do your question justice, but there's two parts. I think the first part is about inequalities, which we'll park and maybe discuss later. The second part talks about the complexity of lifestyle factors. And Ellis, you really did that justice. You talked about the fact that you were sleeping badly, you'd put on weight, you were fatigued, and it wasn't just physical activity challenge. I suppose that the question I would ask is was physical activity, and it sounds like from the discussion you had, main the main action you took out with your GP? I suppose Hussein and I might talk about physical activity as a bit of a gateway drug to lifestyle medicine. You know, it's an entry into all those other factors, and does that resonate, or did you manage to change quite a few of those lifestyle factors at the same time? For some people, that might be overwhelming.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a brilliant question in terms of, we've got the problem and, a solution. For me, yes, for me, the solution was the physical part and the exercise part. And I think I was nudged towards that by the GP because she listened to me and understood my story. And again, questioned me and almost interrogated me to the extent that I thought, look, do you need all this information about my childhood and my past and so on? And she really, kind of dug deep. And almost she pointed me into that direction. Look, I think the answer is you need to kind of get on your bike and get out running because, and for me, really, the answer is it's going to be different for different patients. It's about finding that zone, finding what they are interested in. Now, for some people, it may not be necessarily exercise. At the start, I think going through a journey of understanding what their needs may. But for me, it was actually more the mental aspect of things, the psychological block that I had, and that was, I think, untangled through exercise. That was my solution. But it could have been, perhaps going to the cinemas once a night, once a week, if that was my way of, kind of breaking down the stress and getting to a situation where I could then understand what I had to do because I had a block, and I suspect people are finding themselves in my situation where there is a block. And exercise, it's there. They see their friends doing all sorts of great things, but it's far away. They can't get it. And for me, I had to get into that zone of, look, I accept that this is a problem. I know what I need to do. And then applying my solution to the problem, which was the body. Whereas, as I said, somebody may not necessarily want to do at the start do the exercise. Obviously, the exercise long is a very important aspect of what we're talking about here today. But to get into that zone, it may be more time with friends, socializing in a different way. It may be, as I said, doing other activities that just get you into that better place. So there is that mental element that is a big factor here, and that's what really I think we're talking about, doctor. And that's why I think spending that time talking about things openly, and as I said, I mentioned selling the idea. Essentially, that is what what happened in my situation. I was sold the solution, and I had to buy into that. And she part in embracing that and also promoting that. And again, I've got to where I am without medication, without much involvement from the medical side of things. I've kind of, she taught me to fly, and I've done everything myself. And I feel that if I can share my story and get others around me to do the same, then there are solutions there that don't need to be based on med essentially.
Yeah, no, thank you, Elvis. Really, I think some of the key things that I'll summarize before we move on is that she obviously spent time, she had built up that rapport, and I think that's where continuity can really play a big role when we're having these kind of conversations. And just from knowing about your background in that, when you were younger, you were quite active, you loved football, you did it at a good level. And then that's something that you kind of lost as life became more complicated and responsibilities and work and such forth. And she obviously understood that was the string to pull for you. Not only did you become more active, you changed a number of the other areas eventually down the line once you became kind of more confident. But thank you so much, Elvis. That's really helpful. And we really appreciate you sharing that. Now, for any of you that wants to know about Elvis' story in more detail, on the college website, we have published our patients with lived experience that are going to be on today. And if you want to read that, we're going to be sharing that through this webinar, so you can click on those links. But now I'm going to go back in, and we are all going to do a little bit of movement. So for the next 30 seconds, I have to trust you because I can't see you. Let's just do some squats, because I always think it's slightly hypocritical to have a webinar on, oh, thank you, Callum, on physical activity and not actually have any movement and just have 1 hour of sedentary time. So please take this opportunity. If you want to do squats, if you want to just wave your arms in the air, like you just don't care, you can do that. You can have a stretch. Just move for a few seconds. All right, I think we can squeeze one more. Right. And anyone that's been to my presentation, they'll know that this guy, he never stops. He is literally the endurance king, but we're going to have to move on. And I'd like to introduce Paolo LaBarbera, who I have known, I'm sure it's over 3 years, I think maybe even 4 years. And I get to see him, and it's my privilege. I get to see him every single week at a Monday evening, often on a Saturday morning when we go to run. And I just think he's an absolute inspiration for me. So, Paolo, how are you?
Hello, hi, yeah. Thanks for saying, yeah, I'm really good. Thanks
Fantastic,
for
fantastic.
inviting me to say a few words and to share my story and experiences.
Absolutely. Can we go to when you first came to the physical activity sessions that we run at the primary care network, of which your practice is a member of Clarendon? What was the reason why you came to that first session?
Okay, well, I was already running a little bit. I was running like once or twice a week, doing a few part runs here and there. And I saw it through the practice emails. I'm on the newsletter mailing list. It advertised a session called Run Talk Run. It said, "Come along, your local surgery on a Monday night. We'll have you can walk, you can run, you can meet fellow patients, improve your physical health, improve your mental health." And I just like the idea. I just like the idea of doing a run because I like running, doing a run, but at the same time doing it with other people on a Monday night, which is not perhaps the best time that I would run, and to just be part of some um, is running, but it's like the idea that the fact that it was connected to my surgery just sort of gave it a little attraction to me. There must be something good if the doctors are and we do it. So I was quite intrigued and went along and went on a Monday night, as you say, in a surgery that I've been a member, a patient of since birth, really. So 50 odd years, and it was nice to be there. So I went and quite quickly. So I didn't, as a child, I was quite sickly as a child. I was quite poorly asthmatic as a very young child, and never really active through school, or I was never in the football team or the cricket team, anything like that. In my early 20s, in football refereeing, and that got me active for a few years. Just Sunday morning, grassroots level, and never progressed to any sort of high standard or anything like that. Um, but then once I got married and had kids, I sort of that kind of fizzled away, and just focused on being a family man and on my career. And I just sort of got out of shape really. And 2013, I started running, got introduced to part run, did a few runs on my own, and on and off ran a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week. My fitness improved, but then I would have long periods of I would kind of stop doing it. Then I'll start again for a bit. Then I'll stop again. But around about the time that I first came along to the Run Talk Run session, it was when I was sort of starting out again. I'd started again after COVID and through COVID, and it was I saw it as another opportunity, but another something that would keep me engaged, something I could go to every week. That I'd know there'd be people there, other people that are waiting. That we'd all set off together, we'd all finish together, we'd all run together, and I found it incredibly enjoyable from the very start, and still do now. I mean, I've been to coming on to 100 sessions on a Monday night now over the last 3.5 years. It's amazing how it ramps up.
And as well as what I get out of it, the fact that I get to run, I get to talk while I run, which I didn't think that was possible. I just thought you can't run and talk. You either run or you talk. You can't do both. And when I'm along on a Monday night, I'm running and we're talking, and I'm thinking, hold on, hang on a second. I'm not thinking about how hard it is to run one leg in front of the other, and just chatting away. And it actually made it easier in some ways. So that was quite an experience.
It very much
And
does. And do you find that when you are running and chatting, do you find that you're the way you can have conversations with maybe people that you've never met, etc.? Do you find that it changes that at all, or did you find it quite challenging to do so in a group that you were new to?
not really. I took to it quite well. Really, I enjoyed getting to know the people, and I found that I was running perhaps not quite the pace I would run it on my own, but that's by the by really. But the fact you just keep running and you're talking, and what I also found that I really like a lot about the group is that there's people there like me because they like running and want to improve their physical health, but there's also a lot of people who go along on a Monday night because it helps them with their mental health to know some of these people, and they while running they're chatting away, telling me some of their experiences and what they've been through, and they all say how much it really helps them to have this running session on a Monday night, and that's really inspired me a lot, to keep coming, because I know that not only am I helping myself, but I'm also helping these other people who are coming along. There's a group of us. We don't leave anybody behind. We faster runners swan back and catch up with the ones at the back, and then we keep each other together. We look out for each other. We talk to each other, and it's so I see it as helping myself, but also helping me to help us, in a fun way. And it's also because I'm a great procrastinator. When I run on my own, I'll say, right, I'll go for a run, and an hour later, I'm like, right, okay, I must go. Eventually, I get out the door, but I've wasted like an hour procrastinating. But when you know that it starts at 6:20, set off at 6:30, you've got to be there, knowing that there's people there that need that session, um, and it just keeps me motivated to go along. And I really enjoy my running very, very much. I'm probably in my late 50s now, and I'm running part runs in 27, 28 minutes for 5K, which it's not exactly elite, but it's good for me. I'm happy with
It's
it.
brilliant. It's brilliant for any
Um,
Paolo. And I think like definitely I've noticed over the years in the group, that connection that you find with people, you're really good at that. You're really good at having those conversations and people really do open up. And, for many of the groups, you've led the running group. And I'll always generally go to you to say, Paolo, do you want to lead it? Because you do have that connection with other people. And is that probably as important for you as the running? Like, would you say that's equal weight as to the reason why
yeah,
you like going to these group community physical activities?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Very much so, very much so. The fact that there's others there and that I'm asked to lead the run, I enjoy doing that, looking out for everybody. I like to chat to people, ask them how they are, especially the ones I know who have suffered from mental health. How you getting on? How's it going? And then so yeah, I would say it's probably more important than just me going for a run.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think the group's so eclectic, isn't it? We
Yeah,
have our youngest, some of them are sort of 19, 20 when we've had a few come in, and we've had some in the late 80s, 90s that are in the sort of gentle
yeah,
walking group. And what I
yeah,
think I love most is at the beginning, at the end, because we split up into sort of different paces, but you have that chatting and that connection, and the it's kind of the main place to see people because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they live in more and more isolated lives, don't we?
Yes, 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 yes. It's very enjoyable. So it helps me to, it's another 5K run that I do in a week. It keeps my fitness up. It gets me out, especially in the winter, on a Monday night when it's dark
Mhm.
and cold. I just wouldn't do it if it wasn't for knowing that there's a group there and knowing that there's people that really need that session. and I like the community and the fact that we're all helping each other. I like that very much.
Callum, what have you been thinking? What's your brain been stewing while listening to Paolo there?
Well, there's been some great questions in the chat. The first I'm going to put to you, Paolo, because I think it'd be really interesting to get your perspective. But someone wants to know, as a GP, how to bring up physical activity running without patronizing people. And I wonder if you've got any experience of that as a patient, or any tips for all of us, really.
I don't think it is patron. I mean, it's not a patronizing thing to say try and go for a walk or a run. I would. I think that the term social prescribing is something I've heard in the group that which I hadn't heard of before when I started getting to the group, and it's it's probably just good to encourage to meet other people and to talk, meet other people, talk to other people, walk with other people, run with other people, get to know other people, and you'll enjoy it as well as it's good for you. It helps your mental health, it helps your physical health, and it's fun. It's fun and it gives you something to do. So how as a GP, how I would recommend somebody to do that, I don't know, but maybe just use some of those pointers to implement.
For who asked that question, it's definitely worth checking out the Moving Medicine website. They've just updated it. It's brilliant, and it's got lots of conversation starters. The next question, Paolo, you actually answered, I think, just before it was posted, but they're asking about whether it needs to be a GP that sets up an initiative like Run Talk Run. And actually, in you saying that you've led sessions, I think it's a great example. What an amazing thing that you've come along and now feel in a position to support other people. So yeah, I think
in those groups we've got health and wellbeing coach Joe Fleming, and we've got Snake O'Hill, who's a social prescriber. So no, like it doesn't need to be a GP at all in terms of sort of the rules for when you're completing an active practice. And when it comes to the skill set, no, I don't think GPs are uniquely placed to do that. In fact, in many ways, some of the other roles will bring in expertise and talents of their own. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it actually covers another question by Imogen here that says, no, it's not Imogen, by Kerman Cat, about she's not a GP and wonders what the importance of having a GP backing initiatives are. I think I can totally see where you're coming from. I think there probably is value in having a holistic approach, and I think that's possibly why Paolo, the Run Talk Runs work well. There's so much buy-in, but yeah, absolutely not. And actually,
we can discuss as well with Ollie at the end in terms of, because I think maybe when you're thinking of the leadership buy-in, I think that's really crucial, and often GPs do play those leadership roles. So we can go into
it attracted me to it, knowing that there would be certainly healthcare professionals, if not the GPs themselves, at the session. That attracted me to come along in the first place. If it would have just been meet at the surgery and another runner will take you out for half an hour, the appeal to know that there's a GP and there's a healthcare professional, because it gave me the we're trying to achieve something here. There's a health thing, there's a health element, and for me that was also part of the initial
I hear what
attraction
you
to
mean.
it.
So for the buy-in, like knowing that the staff were there
Yeah,
leading the sessions, it suddenly made it more than just this is a community
yeah,
event you go
yeah,
to.
and continues to be so. Yeah, continues to be so. It's not just like a run club meeting up on a rec on a Monday night. It's we meet at the surgery. There's GPs there. There's healthcare professionals there, and we run together. That remains an attraction to me.
Brilliant. Paolo, thank you. As always, I wish we had more time. And for those that want to look at Paolo's detail, we have that blog there. But thank you so much for sharing some time with you.
Thank you.
We are going to move on now to do a little bit of a stretch. So, Callum, join me now. What I want you to do is stand up and roll your shoulders back in circles. I don't know if I'm on the computer for too long, like my back of my neck and sort of my shoulders get very stiff. Now bring it forwards. So bring the rotations forwards now instead. And then do the thing that I'm literally worst at, which is try and touch your toes. I can barely get past my knees. I'm like the stiffest human being in the world, but I'm sure you guys are better. Just reach down, touch your toes, and then up to the sky. Arms nice and tall. And okay, brilliant, brilliant. I'm sure you guys have all had a long day. Maybe many of you have been at work. Right, next, I'm going to introduce Darren. I'm going to play a short video to give you a bit of a background to who Darren is.
When I first met Darren, he was struggling to keep at even a gentle pace. He was getting quite breathless. That was a combination of course, his baseline fitness, but also the fact that he was recently out of hospital, suffering with a respiratory infection with COVID.
At the end of February 21, I ended up in intensive care for 45 days, put me in an induced coma for 15 days, and then following discharge, I had 2 readmissions from various infections. Immediately in post-recovery, real problems with my leg function. I also had breathing issues. I was very short of breath. I started swimming.
Being able to see Darren swim in the flesh, it's not something that most healthcare professionals will ever get the privilege of doing, because as he continued to swim, you could see visibly how different he was. He was fitter, he looked younger, he looked stronger, and also more confident as well. Encouraging them and supporting them on that journey can be far more powerful than a number of the other interventions that we do.
Okay, Darren, thank you so much. So straight from Hollywood, he has joined us today. Well, that was a fun video to make, was it not?
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
Session out of it, so
I did, yeah. I got a free month out of it, I think. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Oh, fantastic. Well, it's a win-win. So, Darren, thank you so much for coming down. And can we start off with, I know this is a really quite traumatic time of once you were discharged from hospital, because we appreciate that you were in a really bad way in hospital, in ICU, due to a severe COVID infection. What was going through your mind when you're discharged home and you're now back in the care of your GP?
Well, so the driver was. I just wanted to. So when they asked you in hospital what do you want to do, it's like I just want to get back to what I was doing. So that was the driver, and as is the way, I kind of got lost in the system initially, but the GP practice, Clarendon Lodge, were in contact with me almost straight away, saying, "Come." I was getting text messages saying, "Come to run." I was like to my missus, like, don't they know the state of me? I can barely walk to the end of the garden. And I rang them up, and because I kept getting these messages saying come to one of the sessions, and I just said, well, when I'm fit enough, I'll come. And they just said, well, come whatever state you're in, we'll meet you and talk to you. So that's what I did, and I think it was the first session where you and I went up one of the big hills around the back of Leamington at a very slow pace, and you start thinking, well, we can, you can do it. He's got to be driven to do it, so the ambition was there to get to the top of the hill, but it was slow to get up there, but that's the starting point, and from there it went.
Absolutely. I remember when you first came to the group, I was taken back by just how like impacted you were from the symptoms, and you were really breathless, really tired, and I knew from that kind of session it was a really important role of that session was to give you that confidence in being active in a way that and a pace that you could tolerate at that point in time. And what was your experience? Initial walks in those sessions? I'm sure they were very challenging, but what was it like? Did you feel confident at that time, or were you still quite nervous about the whole prospect?
Well, I'm trying to. The mindset is I can't look like I'm flagging, so I've got to try and keep going. But also the conversation's disarming, isn't it? Because you're getting distracted, and you're talking about other stuff, and before you know it, you've gone half a mile, and then you're doing it, and then you start to go further again. So it's I'm not saying you lure people in, but you sort of draw people in, and you kind of then dismiss the blockers in your head because you've just done it. So it's not like you can't do it because you have just done it, and it wasn't so difficult, was it? So then the doors open to come back again then, and you know it's creating that opportunity then because you know it's every Monday 6:30 it will be there. Just get yourself there, and it's for you to arrange to be there, and you know, it's a warm welcome, isn't it? And like I say, there's a whole range of people and abilities, but you know the start of it is a communal moment, and the end of it is a group moment as well. So there's a whole range of abilities and skill sets there, but it's all you know everyone's there for the same reason. They want to get that and get that activity in that 45 minutes.
And before you went through that really traumatic experience in hospital with COVID, if you got that text message then inviting you to a physical activity group at the practice, what do you think your response would have been? And you can be honest.
Yeah, I would have ignored it. I mean, I never went to the doctor. I absolutely never went to the doctor. Absolutely. Well, I don't think I went once in the 10 years before I was ill. Because I just had that mindset I didn't need to, so I would just keep going. If I was ever ill, I would just find every reason not to go.
I think
So I could walk, but you know I walked a lot in work, but not much else beyond that.
Yeah. I think it just shows the importance of that kind of inspirational moments. Like there's these key moments when people either have something serious happen in their life, a health condition, etc. And it's often these periods of time that you have a window of opportunity to make significant behavior changes you did. Because like Darren, you went from more than just sort of doing a few walks, like you actually really incorporated a lot of regular activity. And for you, it was much more than just walking. You included swimming. Do you want to tell me kind of what were your thoughts when you were considering the different forms of activity that you could have done?
Yeah, so initially my leg function was disrupted, so I was limping around the place, and it got so bad because I wasn't addressing the limp in the sort of driving my legs that it was difficult to walk on. So then I had to rest it, but I didn't want to stop. So then and by then I got my COVID vaccination. So then I was able to go out more in wider contact with people. So I then started swimming, and I was going for swimming hours hours a day, you know, 3 hours a day, quite routinely. Then, as that exercise regime matured, I found, you know, I get bored on my own, and I can't be doing it with it on my own. So, started doing exercise classes. So I do 2 or 3 exercise classes every night, and you know, different types. You name it, I'll do it. Modern day, but I'm driven by targets. So I've got sort of, you know, like a list of 20 targets for the week. So if I get 10 of them in the week, that's a good week. But some of them are lifestyle. So, you know, not eating rubber, not having more than 2 cups of coffee or tea each day. You know, it's like little lifestyle things that you can do, 30 minutes walking every day. And then obviously bigger ones as well around classes and overall minutes as well. But things that are easy to do, but things that are also, if you want to get the numbers up, just making you do quite a bit more to get them up.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the idea of that. So you have some things that, as you say, like the different challenges in terms of the things that you've got, some of them much easier and achievable, others more aspirational, but then you're not expecting to hit 20 out of 20 every week because as we
quite,
know,
yeah,
life
yeah.
doesn't work.
12 is an amazing week. 10 is good. 7 is probably on a busy week. That's the more you get. But it drives you, and you got to
Yeah.
keep yourself driven.
We need to publish this Darren scoring system for weekly habits. I think that could definitely work. Okay, and I know Darren, for your work, you're all over the shop because although you live in Leamington, like you're in York at the moment, and do you find it challenging, given that you're constantly on the road for work, to stay active?
Well, so I park my car in a way that I've got to walk. So even if I'm not going to be able to get out because I'll be working late, then I've got to walk there to the workplace and then go from there, or leave my car at work and walk back to the hotel. So I just get those core units of a 30-minute walk in, 30-minute walk out. Whereas in the past I would have just driven and just not, I'd have got a lift to the car if I could in the past. But now, sort of building those bits, and also plenty of casual clothes that I can sort of go out and do a much longer walk in the evening if I get the time. So even if I haven't got a gym that's accessible where I am, I can still do plenty of other things when I am away. So a bit of it is when I am away, not trying to find a hotel that's near a gym that I can access, and also sort of having a list of things I can do. It's dry if it's raining, knowing what is appropriate to plan to do. So let's just keep that in mind, because work is key, but for getting money in, but so too is the exercise and planning how the exercise and just thinking about it, and not having my tea until I've done my exercise as well. So I've got to get as I can't tea by 9, so I get exercise done before then,
So
and fill
prioritizing
it
it
in.
and you're building the
Yeah,
day around
yeah.
it. And before COVID, and when you went through that, what do you think were the main barriers, reasons why you weren't doing the things you are doing now?
I just didn't take it seriously. I just didn't think I was going to reach a point of crisis in health, and having come to that point, you suddenly realise how incredible your health is, and getting it. It's easy to lose and it's hard to get back, and once you recover what you can, you've got to keep hold of it. And it's if you don't keep hold of it, it'll start to deteriorate again. So you've got to keep looking at it. And for me, the hardest point was I ended up at one point with a lung infection, and not being able to breathe was very scary. So I always remind myself, you don't want to end up back there. You may, but don't create casual conditions. Make sure you've done everything you can to make sure you're in a state where you can deal with that.
Spot on. Darren, let's imagine before COVID, and let's say you came to see me about something unrelated, and we brought up the discussion of physical activity for health longer term. What would have been your honest reaction to me bringing that up? Would you feel that it was judgmental, as someone mentioned in the comment before? What would have been your reaction? You can be totally honest, though.
Yeah, so I'd have been a little bit cynical about it, but I think you got to find the buttons to press with people. So parent with kids, you want to be there to support your kids, don't you? You want to be there for your kids. You don't want them to be your carer. So end up in a state where your health is so bad that you can't function and do the things that you could do as a young person is good the impact on what you can do with your role as a parent, and that for me would be the big button. You said about yourself, I'd have been quite laid back about it. I wasn't worried about me because I didn't, frankly, I didn't think. I wouldn't have thought I would be ill. That's an arrogant attitude, but I just didn't see it coming. And
Yeah,
then
your priority was on making
yeah,
sure your family was sorted and the work that
yeah,
you were doing.
absolutely,
I
absolutely. And
think
if my kids were ill, I would do. If my kids were in any kind of distress, I'd be at them straight away to say you got to do exercise, and I've always encouraged that in them. But with me, I wasn't worried, and I wouldn't, and accordingly, I wouldn't have taken that message seriously. But then the risk of not being as a parent would pull me back in. Is
that
what I
would have
would
been
say.
the thing for you. And I think that's what shows how it's so important that we ask the question about what matters most to you. Because for you, that sort of longevity and ensuring that you were there for your kids and health was most important. For others, it could be something different, but it's not about being generic in when we're speaking to patients. As you said, find the buttons. Those
Yeah,
buttons will be different, but find that button and push it. I think that's
I think
really
so.
well
Yeah.
said. Really well said. Callum, do you have any questions that have been brewing away?
Yeah, Darren, you're getting a lot of love. I think there's a lot of people just really appreciating your candor and talking about your journey, and there's a lot of people inspired, I'm sure. Darren, one of the things I wanted to just ask you about is, do you think, given where you were and coming out of a stay in intensive care, are there any safety considerations that you think healthcare professionals should have thought of before recommending that you jump in the pool or head on a walk? And Hussein, maybe you can jump in afterwards.
Well, I think I was cautioned sufficiently anyway. The people always say there's loads of cliches, isn't it? It's about. I always say, because people come to me now at work about illness, and I always say, the cliches are, listen to your body, work with the body that you've got. It's a reset. You're not what you were, and it's recovery is not linear. And you hear all those statements, but and the other one I always say as well is, the illness is not so bad. The recovery is much harder. That's the one you've really got to work at and be prepared for a tough time. So you've got to get your headspace right. So, forums where you can talk, like Run Talk Run, are essential for that, because you'll meet people that have been touched by some kind of event, and you'll start to compare notes and also get strategies to deal with it. So, physical stress is one thing, but mental stress is another again as well. Being prepared for that.
Darren, how do we as healthcare professionals engage people that have had quite a lot of traumatic stress through a range of different things, and how do we engage people to engage in physical activity? What is it? Using those phrases you said, I love that one. Recovery is not linear, or is there any other ways you might suggest?
Well, it's getting them it's getting along to come along to those forums. And the starting point for me was my brother-in-law had sort of gone through trauma, and he said, get yourself a book and start writing everything down. Good things, bad things, who's upset you in the day, what's gone well, all of those things, and do it every day, and you can look back. That takes 5 minutes to tell someone to do that. And whenever I hear someone's got some kind of issue going on, I'll give them a book and have that script with them. And lots of them come back and say that was really useful. But and I went to a counselling session, and they said, "What are you doing?" Because it took me several months to get to a counselling, and I told them that, and they just said, "Oh, that's good, because that's all we tell you to do." So it's kind of like. Just there's little things you can do that'll have a big impact, and it's pointing those things out to people. And not being embarrassed about saying that to people as well, because you don't realize how many people have gone through similar until you start talking about it.
Yeah. I'd say one of the key things when you're speaking to patients about physical activity is that judge the rapport. Like, you don't want to engage in these conversations if you are not able to achieve some form of decent rapport, because you're going to find it hard to ask those questions around what matters most to them. So there is a good and a bad time to raise these kind of moments, and it's about finding that right moment with that right individual, as Darren rightly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think just to sum up kind of how I knew that Darren had made such a huge recovery was one time when we were doing a Run Talk Run, and we'd already pretty much started, and Darren had driven down, I suspect probably from Leeds or somewhere far away. And his ability to get out of the car to come and say hello to me before I had sort of run off, the speed at which he had done that just blew my mind, because of where and what I remembered Darren was before, when he first came to that group. And that's actually where that photo was taken at the end. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, the improved strength, the improved fitness, his balance, it had been transformed over what was probably a year and a half, 2 years of work that he'd put in. But thank you so much, Darren. Really appreciate your honesty and sharing that.
Well, thank you to you as well. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're more welcome. Right. So we are into what I think is probably the most important bit, because we're going to just briefly talk about kind of the Active Practice Charter, and we're going to bring in Dr. Oliver Lawton, who is a clinical director at the Leamington Primary Care Network. Now, the Active Practice Charter, for those of you that don't know about it, it is a RCGP chartership which allows practices or primary care networks to apply in order to achieve a status. And what we're looking for is fulfilling 5 criteria, which you can find on our Physical Activity Hub website, of which we're going to share the link just now. And it's trying to increase physical activity and reduce sedentary time for staff and patients. Because as we know, working in primary care, it can be quite sedentary. We are stuck at desks, even if some of them are standing. But the number one question that I think we get in, and because it's a very good question, is how do we get these kind of projects signed off? Maybe you've approached your clinical director at the PCN or your partners at the practice, and you haven't got maybe the response that you're hoping for. How do we go about doing that? Well, I'm very grateful, because I know he is ridiculously busy. I don't know how he gets through the whole day. But Ollie, thank you so much for joining us.
Not at all. Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant. All right, Ollie. So from your experience, what would you say are the challenges that delivering these kind of initiatives for patients and staff is if we start maybe at a partner level and then maybe then include the sort of PCN element.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you posed that question to me earlier on, I think we could extrapolate that problem out to a lot of services. So we know the right thing to do is, in this example, look upstream, get people active, get people fit, and they will improve their mental health. It will improve their physical health. They'll be happier. They'll live longer. They'll cost the NHS in the long term less. We all know that. Part of the problem in the public sector in general is actually diverting those funds into upstream projects and work streams because you do not get that quick return of investment. And all the stuff you do and the stories, they're hugely inspiring. But then you'll go back to your practices, as you say, and go, right, we want to do this. And people will go, I'm really sorry, but I've had 10 people say they want to do this. And it ultimately comes down to proving some form of return of investment. Now, the challenge with that is I can't tell you that us in Leamington and all of your hard work over the years has saved money that we've been able to reinvest in the lifestyle. You can't do that. We know naturally it will do long term. So you've got to really show some leadership if you want to get these things done. Win the hearts and minds. Ask those. Actually, do you believe that people who go to the gym twice a week or go for a run twice a week, do you believe they cost the NHS more or less? And honestly, you'll never find a GP, and you'll struggle to find any healthcare professional that would disagree with that. So I think the challenge is look in your area. How can you really prove a return of investment? And don't always think about return of investment pounds and pence. It can be time. It can be allowing you to have a more motivated workforce. It's great. I barely ever get to come on a Monday night anymore to your sessions, but it's such a fantastic thing to do. So return on investment isn't all about money. It's about rewards and getting some time back as well.
And I think it's just jump in very quickly, Ollie, because I think that sort of evaluation is really important. But do you think potentially one of the challenges is because obviously the work that we have got evaluated by Coventry University, and it did come up with some sort of advice and estimate of return of investment and plausibility statements. But one of the issues is that a lot of the money that's saved doesn't go into none of it essentially goes into the PCN's pocket because secondary care also benefit, the community services benefit. Is it that inability to sort of gain any kind of financial recompense for the outlay? Do you think that's one of the? Do you think there's actually more?
No, I think it's definitely one of the stumbling blocks. The biggest stumbling block, and I'm kind of going to sound like the really boring contracts guy here, but actually, if we're serious about this as a nation, if we're serious about this as a college and as a profession, as a sector, then we've got to start lobbying to get this stuff into contracts somewhere. They don't need to be big, expensive contracts, but they need to incentivize the right direction of travel. And I personally have seen it. Could show you our accounts. It doesn't cost a lot of money because most of the stuff that you guys do, you're tapping into the voluntary sector. People are queuing up to work with their GPs to do these things because they know we've got access to our patients' records from cradle to grave. We've got the contact. Most of all, and I'd love this to be a take-home message for the GPs on the call, you are a trusted brand. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes. The patients come to see you and they're expecting you to give them a prescription. And then you go, you know what, I don't want to give you a prescription for this. I think you'd be better off doing X, Y, and Z activity. They will trust you. And one of the questions was, from a social prescriber, I believe, hinting at that. So actually, it's not an expensive service that we run at all because you do a lot of work tapping into the voluntary sector. And I know voluntary sector isn't free, but it doesn't take a huge amount. But what we need is just a cultural change where this stuff's incentivized through contracts and maybe even legislation.
I think that's a really good point. And just for people that are sort of looking for advice on that, like what we've done at Leamington Primary Care Network is we've received funding from kind of three main sources. Actually, no, four. So one is from the local council. They will often deliver grants on physical activity or something where physical activity is related to the outcome that they're looking for. So we've achieved free grants over the last 4 years from local council. Your active partnerships. So active partnerships, these are organisations funded by Sport England. There are 42 in England. There are 5 in Wales. And there is, these are set up to try to correct health inequalities around physical activity. So you are literally the perfect person because you know who you can target and how to target. And then another one is sport legacy funding. So a lot of big sporting events, for example, we had the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, and we managed to tap into funding that came out of that because they're looking to see legacy improvements in the communities around. And then the final group is we've aligned with our local ICB who are delivering one of the vanguards for Work Well projects. And they wanted to use our groups because we know that if we can improve people's lifestyles, they're going to be more likely to regain healthy employment. So there are ways, and I think that's really important to try to fund of it as much as possible. But I think, Ollie, you're absolutely right. If we want to incentivize this as the norm, then we need to try to somehow integrate it into care so that it becomes incentivized. As you say, it doesn't need to be much, but it needs to be enough to be worth the time investment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's going to make, hopefully, if this goes well, you will have heard about neighbourhoods. That should provide the structures for those relationships with country sector services that are already going on. That should allow the structure, because at the moment, what it looks like is you're saying emailing and making relationships and networking, which is quite a lot of work. Whereas actually, the future world of neighbourhood teams should allow that to be easier communicated. And I'm always really shocked by what's going on that I have no idea about. And that's not just in lifestyle, all sorts of stuff we do in GP. So I guess my advice would be speak to clinical directors, speak to your neighbourhood team leads and just say, look, what's going on here? It will, unfortunately, come down to individuals driving this stuff, because we are all so busy, aren't we, seeing coughs and colds and trying to diagnose cancers, which takes up our day job, and we all feel like we're firefighting. So if you're an individual that's passionate about making this happen, the reality of it is you are going to have to do some of that kind of in your own time and unpaid, and it's a labor of love. And Hussein will tell you that it's changed his life for the better. You know, doing that is so hugely rewarding. But absolutely contact those people you know locally in those leadership positions, and they're not going to turn you down. They will welcome you. They just probably haven't got time to do the work themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to illustrate how important it is to connect with those partners in the community, if we think about what we do at Leamington PCN, we have Sport in Mind, Mental Health Swims, Swim England, everyone active. We've got the local council, and all these they either provide financial or training or some form of support, let's say public liability support, etc. It wouldn't have been possible if we did this on our own, just simply put, like, regardless of how much time and effort I put in. So building those connections, both locally and those national organizations that can support you delivering it, it's actually fundamental. And hopefully, as Ollie said, the neighborhood health model can help to sort of facilitate a structure to encourage that. Now, Ollie, I want to ask some very specific questions. If I was coming to you, let's say none of this had happened, would you rather this was presented to you in a document where I then said that these are the things that I'm going to assess, for example, staff well-being, I'm going to look at maybe GP appointments of the people that attended, or would you rather that this was presented as an oral presentation, done informally? What do you think? I know that there's no right or wrong here, but just what would you say?
That's a great question. I think there's a place for both, to be honest. I think that most people in positions where they're making commissioning, is what you're asking for, will need some document and some evidence that you've thought through whether this is going to save some pounds or what the outcomes are. But I think you cannot underestimate the power of a good oral presentation or just a conversation, a chat, because individuals make these things come to life. And I talk about in my general life sort of presenting the PDF version of something. So if I get a PDF version, it's finalized, I can't edit it, someone's thought about this, I've got to take it as a fait accompli. And I think that there is an element to lifestyle medicine that could be done that, right, this is in the 10-year plan, isn't it? You've got, as a leader, you've got to be showing, you've got to be switching from illness to prevention. Isn't this a great way of doing that? Just speaking in those terms, normalizing it, quoting the 10-year plan, quoting all of the evidence out there, it normalizes it. And then for people like me to go, oh, yeah, but I'm still going to spend some more money on, a respiratory illness clinic in the middle of winter. It's a hard thing for us to deny. So specifically, I wouldn't overthink how you present it, but you do need to have some document that people can stew over to really think about.
Last question, and this may be a difficult one, but let's say they've gone to the clinical director and they've got a polite no. If they're still passionate and want to deliver this, what would your strategy be? Should they think about getting feedback and trying to address what potential changes they could do and represent, or should they think about any other strategies that could go about achieving the outcome of bring this project to life?
Yeah, so there's also, obviously neighbourhoods is just one footprint through which this can be delivered. One of my other roles, which is probably more relevant for this stuff, is I sit on the care collaborative, which most areas will have an equivalent of that, and they're going to be the next big thing in terms of community where representatives from all of those different sectors come in. I would say don't be too binary in has to be GP land or nothing. I think that as a GP going to whoever, everyone active is our local provider, they'd probably look after you as well. I would be really surprised if someone said no. I wouldn't be surprised if they said there's no money, but we'll do whatever we can to support you. But to answer that, if your neighbourhood team isn't interested in it, or your clinical reps through PCN, then go straight to your strategic commissioner.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And quite a few leisure centres actually have healthcare professionals delivering these kind of services. Often they have sort of budgets more flexible than what you will find within healthcare. So thank you, Ollie. Really, really, really grateful for your time. And so we're going to just bring this session to a close. And thank you so much for listening and any questions posed. What I want to do briefly before Callum brings up any key questions that he thinks we should answer before we bring it to end is, if you've been listening and you think, well, we've got a fantastic story at our practice, our PCN, maybe some of the patients that you've been dealing with, love to know about it. Please use this link. And we can put the link in the chat as well to submit a simple form where you can outline some of that, because we'd love to showcase it, pop it on our website for others to be inspired by. For those that don't already know, we have a physical activity toolkit, which is a website with a whole host of resources. We have text templates, social media assets, graphics to put on your TV screens, various flyers that you can print out, as well as, if you're not an active practice, a link to sign up to become an active practice. And if you want to watch any of our past webinars, including this one, you can now view them on the college website, on our YouTube channel. You can use the link on the right-hand side to do that. And for those of you that may be attending next month at the annual conference in Newport, Wales, we're going to have a pretty healthy showing there with a presentation occurring on the 9th at 12:10. We've also got a workshop on the following day, on the second day. And at the beginning of the second day, of course, we have a physical activity session where myself and Callum are going to be making general fools of ourselves, doing various different forms of movement. It's not just this time. We're going to have, yes, a bit of running. We're going to be doing a bit of dancing, a bit of strength training, a bit of flexibility work, all with some great music in the beautiful Newport in Wales. So we'd love to see you if you're there. If not, maybe think about grabbing some tickets. So before we go through some questions, I want to share with you a fantastic resource for patients. It's by We Are Undefeatable, and it's a really clever app which includes AI to help guide advice and actual sessions based on people's long-term conditions and symptoms. I'm just going to play the video now.
Get active with me by downloading the free We Are Undefeatable app.
have to admit that app is fantastic. Actually, unfortunately, I fell off my bicycle and fractured my clavicle, but utilizing AI within that app, it gave me a guided strength program to eventually get the shoulder moving again, which I was very grateful for. But Callum, before we close, any key questions in the chat that you think we should go through?
Yeah, Hussein, I've managed to go through and answer most of them, and because were amazing and covered so many great kind of pertinent things. There was one question that I think would be a really cool thing to finish on. It was a really pertinent question, and asked, do we think that our own levels of personal physical activity influence patients? And I think I'm really passionate about this, that advocacy really matters, and that it's fairly unequivocal that one of the biggest predictors of health professionals promoting physical activity is their own level of physical activity. And I think that's a really cool note to end
on. And I think that's absolutely right, because when I think about, I'm so thankful for Ollie giving the green light to so many of the projects. I suspect in many of the other PCNs, if I tried to do the same thing, I wouldn't have got the answer. And Ollie's a very active guy himself and cares so much about it, including for his family and kids. And I think that was a key reason why he was able to facilitate the projects that we're doing. So it just shows how important it is that we find movement for ourselves. As he absolutely right said, Callum, if the first thing we do as a take action point from today is just discover movement, if we haven't already. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you for all the guests, Paolo, Darren, Elvis, Ollie. We really appreciate your time and what you've given to us. And I hope those at home have enjoyed the session. Take care and have a fantastic evening.